In the year 1902, Edgar Cayce conducted a reading that would become a key part of his legacy. A 5-year-old girl, previously diagnosed with a terminal brain injury, was brought to him by her parents as a last resort. Cayce discovered that her true ailment was a spinal injury, not a brain injury. He recommended an adjustment of her vertebrae. Remarkably, within a few months, the girl had completely recovered. But Edgar could do more than just health readings. He correctly predicted really big events in history. Half a year before the stock market crash in 1929, Edgar Cayce advised his friends who invested in stocks to sell them. Those who didn't listen ended up losing their money. In 1931, he forecasted that the global economy would bounce back by spring 1933, which it did. Then, in January 1934, he foresaw Hitler's rise to power in Germany. Hitler indeed became the Führer later that year in August. Cayce also mentioned that Hitler would stay in power until a war from outside would overthrow him. In 1935, he predicted the start of World War II, envisioning an alliance between Austria, Germany, and Japan. But he also said the war would involve many countries and that the US would join in 1941. Cayce also predicted the deaths of John F. Kennedy and Franklin D. Roosevelt, as well as civil and racial unrest in the US during the 1960s. In 1938, he spoke about finding parts of temples under the sea near Bimini, off Florida's coast. He suggested this could be the rising of Atlantis in 1968. Sure enough, 30 years later, in 1968, the Bimini Road was discovered in the Bahamas. Cayce described Atlantis as an ancient civilization as large as Europe, with advanced technology which he said disappeared in the Atlantic Ocean about 10,000 years ago due to a massive flood. This ties in with the flood myths present in many civilizations, which often date back 10,000 years. Among his most striking predictions was that the 44th President of the United States would be African American, a prophecy fulfilled with the election of Barack Obama. In his later years, Edgar Cayce made a chilling prediction about his own death. He prophesied he would be buried in 4 days, a prediction that came true to the day, adding a final eerie note to his extraordinary life. Among Edgar Cayce's most alarming visions were those predicting future global disaster. He foresaw a series of events that would reshape the Earth's geography and climate. Edgar Cayce made some big predictions about how the world map will change. He said that Africa will split into 3 parts because of a new waterway forming as the Nile gets wider and the Red Sea grows. This will make Cairo disappear under the sea. Asia will see huge changes too. The ocean will cover land from the Philippines to Japan as the Pacific Plate moves. Japan will mostly sink, leaving only a few small islands, and Taiwan and most of Korea will be lost to the sea. China's coastline will move inland a lot. He also said people in India shouldn't try to go to higher land inside the country because the land will buckle. They should go to the high mountains in Tibet and Nepal instead. Antarctica will change from being icy to green and fertile. Australia will lose about a quarter of its land to flooding, turning the Adelaide area into a sea and making deserts like Simpson and Gibson into farmland. New Zealand will get bigger and connect to Australia, becoming one of the safest places. Europe will face big changes too. Most of Northern Europe, including Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark, will sink and become many small islands. A lot of the UK, from Scotland to the English Channel, will go under the sea, but some small islands like London and Birmingham will survive. Ireland will almost totally disappear, except for some high land. Russia will get separated from Europe by a new sea formed by the merging of the Caspian, Black, and Baltic seas stretching to Siberia. Russia will become Europe's main food supplier. In Canada, the coastline will move in by 200 miles, and regions like Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and parts of Alberta will become safe places for refugees. The North American plate moving will create new islands off California's coast, almost 150 of them. The west coast will shift east towards Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. The Great Lakes and St. Lawrence will join up and flow from the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. The coastal areas from Maine to Florida will be flooded, and Mexico's coasts will be underwater too. The Baja coast of California will turn into a bunch of islands. This huge change will displace and even kill billions of people. In the quiet rural lands of Kentucky on the 18th of March 1977, a child was born into a humble farming family. This child, Edgar Cayce, would grow to become one of the most puzzling figures of the 20th century. From his earliest days, Edgar was no ordinary child. While other children found joy in play, Edgar was drawn to the mysteries of the Bible. where he constantly seeks answers in the ancient texts. The woods in Kentucky were a special place for young Edgar. He said he met little folk there, beings that were more like spirits than people, similar to fairies from old stories. At the age of 11, an extraordinary event occurred. In these woods, Edgar encountered a winged woman, a vision that would shape the course of his life. She asked him what he desired most. Edgar's response? To help others, particularly sick children. Edgar had trouble at school, which made his family worried. His dad was really upset when he found out Edgar wasn't doing well in school. After his dad scolded him, Edgar lay down and heard the voice of the winged woman in his head. She told him to sleep with his head on his books. When he did this, he found out he could remember everything in the books when he woke up. There was a time Edgar got hurt at school, hurting his back so badly that he couldn't move part of his body. This made everyone in his family very sad and worried. One night, while half asleep, Edgar said the recipe for a medicine made from herbs. His parents decided to try this medicine. The next day, Edgar was all better, like he had never been hurt. Motivated by this belief, Edgar began to offer psychic readings, primarily focusing on individuals suffering from illnesses and injuries. People had different thoughts about Edgar Cayce's predictions. Some thought they were like a sneak peek into the future, full of big ideas, but others thought they were just lucky guesses or just Edgar using his imagination. Even with these different opinions, Edgar's predictions made a big mark. They led to lots of books, groups, and many people who really want to understand his way of seeing the world and what might happen in the future. Nowadays, experts in different fields study Edgar's work. They're trying to figure out if he was connecting to something big and shared by everyone, or if he just had a really special way of thinking. Edgar Cayce is a real mystery in history. He went from being a regular farm kid to a famous person known for seeing the future. His story makes us think about what people can really do and the mysteries that we haven't figured out yet. As we finish talking about Edgar Cayce, we think about how his story still grabs our attention. Was he someone who could see the future, an imaginative person, or something else? His story keeps making us curious and keeps people talking, making us wonder about all the things we don't know about our minds and spirits. For those who stay till the end, here's a little Easter egg. Did you know that Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, reportedly gave most of his readings while in a trance-like state? Imagine the wealth of knowledge we could unlock if we learned to tap into our subconscious minds like Cayce. Before we part ways, if you've been captivated by the story world of Edgar Cayce, and you're eager for more explorations into the mysteries of the past, the wonders of the human mind, and predictions about our future, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification button. Join us as we dive into more fascinating stories and uncover hidden gems of history and the human psyche. You never know what secrets we might unravel next. Thank you for watching.